You know, back when I was working full time and I was looking for a way to sort of break free from the life that I was living, I wanted to make a change, I wanted to set some goals. I spent a lot of time reading the work of people like Simon Sinek and Jay Shetty and a whole lot of other thought leaders. I would listen to their podcasts, I would read their books and watch their videos. And I did everything that they were telling me that I should be doing. And yet I was no closer to getting what I wanted. I wanted to change my life. I knew that something wasn't working, so I was turning to these experts to try and get the answers, to try and reshape my goals and go after something that was going to be achievable. And it took me a really long time to figure out why it wasn't changing for me. And that's what I wanted to talk to you about today. Because the thing that I've come to learn is that your goals don't matter. And I know that sounds really weird and strange, and I'm sorry to say it, but it's true. Your goals don't matter. It's the systems and processes that you put in place to help you get towards your goal that really matter. It's a cliche, I know, but that's the old adage, the journey, not the destination. It is the journey. Those systems and processes that help take you towards your goal are what help to change your life. And notice I said there very specifically that take you towards your goal, that not help you achieve your goal. Because it really is about the journey. Your goal, what you want at the end can change, and that's okay, but those processes and systems, they can really, really fundamentally impact your life in positive ways. And I'm living proof of that, and I've seen so many other people make this shift and make this change and be able to achieve so much more from their life, be able to redesign their life and focus it much more towards what they actually want to achieve. And I've seen this in my coaching work, I've seen this in friends and colleagues. And if you focus on that, if you focus on those processes, those systems, those foundations, and you focus on the journey and not the destination, everything becomes easier. And you get such a greater sense of achievement, even though you might not have achieved your goals. Hi all, if you're new here, my name's Damian, and I talk about redesigning your life. I want you all to live the life that you want to live, not the life that other people or things are imposing on you, or that other people feel like you should live, because you deserve to live your life. So that's what I talk about on my channel. I'm glad that you're here, and let's talk a little bit more around this whole process of the journey and not the destination. I can still vividly remember about 20 odd years ago, I was sitting in a bookshop in Sydney and I was reading this book. I was working in the bookshop actually, and I was shelving in the business section, and I found this book and the cover looked really interesting. And on my lunch break, I went back and I got it out and I was flicking through it, and he was talking about success in this book and the achievement of goals. And he made this really interesting point about how we set goals and how most people set goals. And he was talking about the concept of, we always focus on this thing in the distance. I want to make $1 million. And that's fine if that's sort of what you're working towards. But what his point was is that if you only make 950,000, is that a failure? And of course it isn't. We know that. But a really interesting psychological thing happens. When we're working towards that goal, if we've set it so far in the distance, we develop this thing called the reward gap. It's something I've called the reward gap, this distance between where you are today and that goal in the future. And the bigger that is, sometimes the harder it is to keep motivated towards achieving it. And then every single day when you check into work or whatever the task is that you want to be doing, whether it's a fitness goal or anything like that, it feels even harder because that goal is so far away. And I speak to lots of people every day who have these massive, massive reward gaps. And that's just not how the human brain is wired. The human brain is not able to make that huge leap. It focuses much more on now. And that's why I spend so much time talking about presence, and why I believe it's one of the most important skills that we can cultivate today. Because if we're present, we stay in the moment. We can look at what we've achieved. And going back to this book, he was talking about the concept of setting micro goals and setting up little steps and checkpoints, base stations, if you like, on the way towards that big goal. And that makes logical sense. Today I want to make $10,000, or my first goal is to make $10,000, and then I'm at 100,000 and then 500,000. That makes sense. It's like climbing a ladder. And yet so many people don't do it. I didn't do it. I had these big goals, and I was so far away from them, and I never stopped to think about it. So I would always just go in and I've got the goals, I've got the process, I've got the plan. But I would never focus on those systems that were going to get me there. And that's what I said before around the real genius of a lot of this online self-help is around helping you to reframe and reshape those processes. That's why I like the concept of talking about redesigning your life and helping people set a foundation, and why my core system, the Experience Compass, is based on a compass. Because it gives you that permission to move around. It guides you back in the general direction of where you think you want to be heading, but it lets you know that it's okay if you want to go off left or right. Because imagine if your goal is, I want to build a business that makes a mere $1 million a year. And 6 months into it, you all of a sudden discover a passion for something else that gives you so much more fulfillment. It's not going to give you the $1 million, but you realize it's much more important. Then you need to be able to pivot towards that. And it can be really hard sometimes to pull away. But that's why I wanted to talk to you today, to actually say, remember, the journey is what matters. Each and every day when you show up to your work or to your gym or with your family or whatever it is that you want to achieve, whatever area of your life that's in, every day you need to show up with intention, with presence, and with focus on the now. What can I do today to get a little bit better? To take one step further on that journey? And then reflect back at the end of the day. What did I learn? What can I apply again in the future? One step at a time. Because if you're always looking up and looking out in the distance, focused on that far off goal, if you've got that reward gap being much too large, it's really easy to get waylaid, and it's really easy to feel lost. So I've done a lot of thinking around what we can do and what I can do to help change that, because I know it's really easy to fall back into old patterns, to set those goals. I want to lose 10 kilos. I want to, make $1 million. I've been thinking about how we can do that. And one of the first things we need to do is make the mindset shift that the greatest goals that we're ever going to achieve in our life are not external goals. They're going to be internal ones. And that's really important to make that shift. $1 million is great. And if you reach that, if you build the business that brings in $1 million, that's great. But those skills and techniques that you've developed and that you now have inside you to have been able to run and develop that business to make $1 million, that's so much more valuable. Likewise, if you want to lose 10 kilos, that's great if you do that. But the skills, the habits, the patterns, the eating right, the exercise, all of those other things that you developed internally are what really matters. That's the real reward. So the first thing I did in my life, and the first thing I encourage people to do when I talk to them, is make sure that you're aware of this difference between internal and external goals, and the value of the internal being so much more important. That gives you that permission at the end of the day, even though you might not have brought in any more money or you might not have lost any more weight. You've learned something more, you've developed more, you're moving along on that internal development towards that internal goal. It gives you that reward, and it allows you to feel like you're making progress. So that's the first thing. The second thing is this realization around the fact that the other problem with setting these big, far-off destination-based goals is that they will always move. They will always change. If you make the $1 million, then you're going to want to make another million or 10 million or 100 million. Similarly, if you lose the 10 kilos, you're going to want to keep it off or lose a little bit more. Those goals are so transient. That's why it's so important to focus on the internal goals. So remember that and actually reshape how you set your goals. And the third thing is to remember the explorer mindset. Again, that's why I talk about compasses all the time. Explore your life. Just because you want to lose weight doesn't mean all of a sudden that new goals might not appear alongside it. You might all of a sudden want to run a marathon or do some swimming or learn a new skill or join a sports team or whatever that is. If you live with the explorer mindset, you're always open to doing that. So now all of a sudden, instead of going to the gym every day to lose weight, you're going to a sports field to compete with other team members or join a social club, and you're meeting new friends, new people. So all of a sudden your journey's changing, but again, you're becoming a richer person, a newer person as a result of it. Be an explorer. Don't just hold a map rigidly and follow that path that's been set out there. Explore, grow, create, experience new things. I promise you it will be so much more rewarding for you at the end. I want you to remember that this reward gap is a choice. It's actually a choice to hold your happiness hostage until some point in the future. And why would you want to do that? You're in the now. You might walk under a bus tomorrow. Live in the now, celebrate the now. Look at what you're changing. Look at what you're overcoming, what you're developing. Look at those systems and processes that I talked about before. And each time you watch a video like this, or you read a book, or you go and experience a live talk event, remember, these people are giving you the advice that is going to help shape your journey, not help you to create these outcomes, these goals, these destinations. A business guru is not going to help you build the business. They're going to give you the skills that you need to become a better business leader. It's subtle, and it's sometimes hard to not mix the two up. But it's important. Remember this. And so what you'll find now when you reframe it this way and read these books, you will see that it's an opportunity to add new skills to your arsenal, add new techniques to your life that will help you in so many ways. That's the real secret of a lot of these books. That's the trophy that we're missing when we look at them. These systems and processes and foundations upon which we can build our own lives. Because these people, these authors, they can't do it for us. At the end of the day, we have to become the architects of our own lives. So it's important to develop those skills and to then build and design your life yourself. That's why my whole videos are about redesigning your life and creating the life that you want, taking skills and lessons from all around you, really learning to see the world around you. Because you never know where that next lesson is going to come from. It might come from a book, it might come from an artwork, it might come from something your kid says, it might come from a song. But if you're not open, if you're only focused on looking ahead, looking towards that future goal, you're not going to be receptive to it. You're not going to develop and change. And then ultimately you won't get to where you want to get to. You won't create that life you want to create. So that's what I wanted to share with you today, because it was a lesson that took me a long time to learn. How to really use these books and use this advice in an interesting way and a different way, a way that works better for me. And I hope it works for you too. But thank you for taking the time to join me today. I look forward to talking to you again in another video. But for today, think about those processes. Think about what you've learned for today and stay present. And I'll see you soon.